Since I recorded a new video, and I have been reading a lot of really great books. I'm really excited for my next quarterly wrap up. But I wanted to do this TBR for a while, and there's a couple TBRs I'm always talking about doing, but sometimes it can be really daunting to film them. But I thought that I did some research beforehand on this one, and I thought that we could just do it. So, as of today, it is May 21st, 2024, which, if you do not know, it's been almost exactly 10 years since I graduated high school. So I am 28, closer to 29 at this point, but it has been a decade. So in 2024, or in 2014, I was getting ready to go to college. I was secret engaged to my boyfriend at the time, who was not my current husband. I was spiraling, getting nervous to go to school. I had spent a lot of my adolescence and teen years with people being like, you're going to be ready for college. You're going to be so ready for college. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait to get out of this place. Like, oh, yeah, so cool, so indie, so twee, whatever. And I was having a really hard time with the transition. But I thought it would be fun to reflect on maybe some of my looks from that era and also some of the books from that era. So I think I've talked about this like maybe briefly, maybe in my Welcome to BookTube video, but I was somebody who I feel pretty blessed, honestly, that I didn't have to give up reading for fun until about my senior year of high school. I always was reading. I know I've talked, like a lot of my friends in high school, and when you watch a lot of content, especially from like younger creators, I feel like I interact with a lot of people that are like, yeah, the last book series I read was The Hunger Games, and they read that when they were in like middle school, sometimes even elementary school. And I really felt really lucky that like I still felt like I loved reading enough, or I had the free time. It wasn't until I was a senior and I was taking AP Lit that I just really did not have the time or energy to read for fun. And then probably throughout college as well. I wasn't really reading for fun throughout college. Just too much to do, and I probably didn't really start like avidly reading again until a couple years after college, because I had to figure out what I liked. I was reading a lot of classics, like classics only, and my goal was to read all the classics that were in my little local section of my library, in the little section of my local library. Now, I was 18 at the time and in a pretty privileged place, and I was not really recognizing that the section that I wasn't really doing research on what was determining a classic. I wasn't being intersectional in my reading at the time, or even thinking that I needed to be. So I definitely missed some classic literature that, in reflection, I wish I had read at the time, because I just was pulling whatever sounded interesting to me, but I wasn't being mindful of who was curating these sections. Books from when I was in high school, and also some of the most popular books from 2014. So when I was in high school, I now know that my style of the time would have been defined as twee, or I kind of was incorporating some more like indie sleaze kind of elements, although those were not really what I would have said my style was at the time. I love to wear colored tights. I had this pair of mustard orange tights and burnt orange tights that I wore all the time. I had this pair of perfectly ripped black tights that I refused to give up, because whenever I wore something that I felt was like a little too floral and feminine, I loved pairing them with these like really ripped up tights that I had tried to save with like clear nail polish and hairspray, and I loved the way they like would rip. I always had issues with eczema on my eyelids, so I was always trying to do like a fun lip color. That was like a big thing for me, and I always was constantly dyeing my hair. So here are some photos. I was always dyeing my hair like red or purpley, and definitely was like, felt very like twee / indie sleaze. I loved like Ingrid Michaelson, and man, there was this band that I loved. I loved the Colts too. I really loved them. And then San Cisco was a band that I was just like in love with. I loved watching Freaks and Geeks all the time, which was not a TV show that was on in 2014, so I felt very cool. And yeah, I just was like a perfect little pretentious high schooler. Coupled with the fact that I loved reading classic novels all the time. So I was going to go through some of the top lists for 2014, and I have some screen recording footage that we'll go through it together. And I will pick some to read. Now, I don't think I'm going to pick ones in every category. There are some books I just don't think I want to read. I know that I'm going to have to read Gone Girl for this, which I have never read. But yeah, we'll get all those. That was the more fun part, I think, is seeing what we were doing in 2014 book-wise. So, I want to do two things. I want to read best-selling novels for adults at the time. Best-selling books of 2014. Okay. So I'm going to screen record. You guys can have a little screen recording here. Alrighty. So let me look at Publishers Weekly. There's going to be a couple different categories, I imagine. Okay. First, 3 free articles. Alright. This is one of 3 free articles, so it better be worthwhile. So the top sellers in print were John Green's The Fault in Our Stars, which I have never read. The Long Haul, which I don't even know anything about. The Divergent series, Killing Patton, Allegiant, Gone Girls #7, The Fault in Our Stars, which was the movie tie-in, and John Green's The Fault in Our Stars hardcover. Kindle bestsellers, we have The Fault in Our Stars and Gone Girl. We also have The Goldfinch on here, which I would be interested to read because I did not like The Secret History. Okay. Nielsen Bookscan Adult Fiction. Gone Girl, Grey Mountain, John Grisham, I'm not going to read a John Grisham novel. Orphan Train, Gone Girl movie tie-in, The Goldfinch, Gone Girl, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. That makes sense. That's when she wrote the sequel or the prequel to it. So Harper Lee only ever wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, and then that book came out. 50 Shades is on this list. Interesting. Inferno by Dan Brown, Mr. Mercedes, Edge of Eternity. I'm not going to read it. Ken Follett. The Great Gatsby, which makes sense also because the movie had recently come out, and I loved Scott Fitzgerald. I toyed with rereading not The Great Gatsby actually, but This Side of Paradise, which was one of my all-time favorites at the time. I think I read that when I was a junior. So none of the books I picked were from 2014. I'm having a hard time placing which ones I actually read in 2014. Maybe I'll find some archival footage somewhere of it, but I doubt it. But I picked the 2 that stood out the most to me. But I am going to pick books that were published in 2014. Okay, so it seems like The Fault in Our Stars and Gone Girl keep coming up a lot, but I am interested in The Nightingale. That also has recently had, or The Goldfinch, which I think has just really recently had a bit of a thing. I wanted to look at was the Goodreads Choice Awards from 2014, because they existed then, and Goodreads is so bad at doing the Choice Awards. I'd be so interested to see. I'm not going to make myself pick winners if that doesn't sound interesting in the category to me, but let's see if there's anything fun we can have to round out. Okay. There's 14 categories. I'm already not going to read a memoir, a business book, or food or cookbook, novel, young adult fantasy, or middle grade, or a picture book, but we can certainly go through these categories. So let's start with fiction. Yes, okay. The winner for this title is Landline, which I will tell you guys, I re-looked at this a couple times when I was like planning out this video to make sure there was like at least something I wanted to do, but I want to read this because I want to read Rainbow Rowell because she is a Omaha-based author, and I've been meaning to do a series on like Omaha books or like Nebraska books, and she always comes up as somebody as I should do, which makes sense, obviously. But I'm trying to think, do I want to read this and tie it in with that? Let's see if there are any other fiction options. And this was the winner that year. That's kind of crazy to me. Big Little Lies by Lan Moriarty, which I recently read Apples Don't Fall, and they made that into a TV show. Stone Mattress, Nine Tails. That's an anthology, which is interesting to me that is in the fiction category. I've read that. Station 11, which I know a lot of people talk about. I've also seen A Sleepwalker's Guide to Dancing in my library recently, so maybe we could do that. Okay, Tigerman. All right. So I think that we have a couple options here. Let's go to my notes app. So we could do Landline, The Sleepwalkers Dancing or Station 11. I think I know that people talk. Oh. People talk about Station 11, so I would be interested potentially in doing that. Mystery and thriller. Stephen King, Mr. Mercedes. Which is number 1 in a trilogy. Veronica Mars is a fun option. There's a lot of... Okay, hold on. Festive in Death is number 39 in a series here. The Silkworm is number 2. This Janik Ivonik is a 21. The Army... Man, there's a lot of, like, deep sequel. Like, not a sequel in here. Like, deep ones. Like, 6, 21, 26. Like, a lot of options, I feel. Okay, I'll be honest with you. None of these speak to me, so I probably won't read any mystery or thriller, although it might be fun to have a not generalized fiction. All right, historical fiction. So, Monk Kid. Ken Follett, that's a number 3. Auschwitz Estate, The Miniaturist, Museum of Extraordinary Things. Alice Hopfin, I don't know. I did not like the book Practical Magic, so I've always been a little nervous. I DNF'd that, so let's see. Euphoria by Lily King. The Secret Life of Violet Grant. Frog Music. Okay. Best Fantasy. Okay, friends. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I stopped reading the what is that called? The Discovery of Witches series not even halfway through, like 1/8 of the way through the second book, because I was so mad. I think I mentioned that I loved the first book, and I did. I would read that book 100 times over. It's brain candy. I gobble it right up like a greedy reader. I loved that book. I was so excited to go get the second book, and she fucking gets pregnant so early on, and I immediately get so annoyed. But the Book of Life, which I think is the final book in the series or the trilogy, won for fantasy. And part of me is like, should I read it? I'd have to read the second one. But I got so mad. She gets pregnant so early, and it turns into such a, like, I'm waiting back with my boys. I got so annoyed at it. Oh. Okay. So number 3. Yeah, again, a lot of, like, series winners in here. And, like, deep into the series. Let's see. Do any of these fantasy books appeal to me? The Goblin Emperor, maybe? Oh, let's see what the romance options are. Written in My Own Blood. Okay. Colleen Hoover is on here. 2 Colleen Hoovers are on here. Maybe Someday, An Ugly Love. Archer's Voice. Okay. I did not read that book, but I like this creator, Lexi, and she made a really great video about why this book's not very good. I'll link it. Romancing the Duke. Oh, is that the Bridgerton books? Huh. A lot of these look like old school romance books. Okay. Science fiction. The Martian by Andy Weir. Okay. This is constantly on my list. Okay, The Martian is, like, constantly, I feel, on my list because somebody or another is mentioning it. And I think I mentioned this, but let's just put it out there. This book is by Andy Weir, and every time I see this and Station 11, I think that Andy Weir is the very flamboyant figure skater from the early 2000s, Johnny Weir, and I'm always like, what an interesting career shift. And then I have to remember that they are, in fact, not the same person. So I might read this because I've been looking for an excuse to read it. And I wanted to add something in here that wasn't just, like, general fiction. So sci-fi seems really fun. The science fiction category actually looks pretty interesting. There are some series, but not everything is a series. I spoke too soon, potentially, as I continue to scroll through this. Okay. Horror. That would be fun. Okay, the Anne Rice, number 11 in the Vampire Chronicles. Bird Box, Code Zero. Yeah, why are so many of these series. It's not like people weren't writing books. Horror Story by Grady Hendrix. I didn't realize that came out in 2014. All right, there's a book on here that is on my want to read list anyway, so I'll add it as a potential. Broken Monsters. Humor. Let's see. Sometimes I don't think I want to read, a bunch of celebrity books, and then a William Shakespeare inspired, and okay. Yeah. None of these seem like something that I want to read at the moment. I'm also interested what put something in the humor category and not the romance category. And I think it's like how kinky they are. It looks like for some reason, really intense ones. Some of these nonfiction seem like good ideas. Bad Feminist by Roxanne Shangay is on here. I'm not saying none of these would be good reads or anything like that. They're just not things that I'm like super interested in reading for this video. Same with memoir and biography. Oh, there is something fun in here. As You Wish. Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride. I'm sure that these are great stories. I wonder what makes a celebrity memoir be in the memoir category versus the humor category. There's History and Biography, The Romanov Sisters. Liar, Temptress, Soldier, Spy is a book I think I did read. I listened to, or at least listened to part of it. It's not that I never read nonfiction. It's not that I wouldn't read nonfiction. It's just I don't want that. Okay, of course you got business books, and the winner was Girl Boss. I'm so happy about that. Food and cookbooks. I'm trying to get to the debut category. I probably, it might be fun to like pick a recipe out of the winner of this category. Make it a head barefoot contested book. Maybe I'll look up a recipe that seems like I could do that. Let's see what we were eating in 2014. Graphic novels or comics. Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Rift, I actually have read. I do like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Best poetry. Again, I just don't think it's really in me to judge these. Best debut authors. Okay, that's what I was getting to. Red Rising won. Cruel Beauty. Sweet Addiction. Okay, The Martian is on here. Dorothy Must Die. Okay. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Nong. With the Shawl. Stolen Songbird. Fully Measured, Jane Glory, Elizabeth is Missing, Open Road, The Way to Blood, Half Bad. Okay. I think Everything I Never Told You is going to go onto my list. So I have some great options here from the Goodreads. But like I said, I don't really want to read more than 7 books for this video. That's a lot of books, I think. So I'm going to... Okay, friends. So, in 2014, we're revisiting it. And the books that we're going to read are 5 books that were published that year that won awards or were on best-selling charts. So I think most identifiably, we have The Fault in Our Stars, which was a youth novel at the time, or like an adolescent novel, and Gone Girl. Those are 2 fundamentally like iconic zeitgeist touch points of the era, and I think that's undeniable. They both have movies based on them, and they were huge parts of the world at the time. I'm going to try to get out Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch. We will see. I have placed that on hold. We'll see how long it is. I could take it out on ebook too if it ever comes down to it. But it seems like it's like an incredibly long book, and I don't normally like to read ebooks that are thousands of pages long. But I could read it on my iPad. It is also a 32-hour audiobook, which I just don't realistically see myself reading. I also have taken out 2 books that were on the shortlist for the Goodreads Choice Awards at the time. The first I put on hold, that's Station 11, which was not the winner, but was on the list for horror, and then, or for science fiction. The Martian was the winner, so if that hold doesn't come out, I will read The Martian. And the other one is Station 11, which I think was on the list for debut. No, that can't be right. Also science fiction? Or, sorry. Then the other one was Beautiful Bodies, which was give you reviews, and I'll tell you guys what I think, and I'll try to get better at vlogging. I bought new microphones to vlog with, actually, so we'll see. But for now, I'll leave you guys this picture of me from my high school graduation. All right. Bye.
Okay, friends. So it's early Saturday morning, like 8:30 Saturday morning. Today is June 1st, and I finished Gone Girl 2 days ago. So I finished it pretty late. Well, I guess I finished it like at 1 a.m. yesterday morning. I listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend, and I've really just been stewing on like how I really feel about it. Because I gotta say, I was shocked that I think it holds up as being really great, a really fantastic story. I mean, I guess it's a thriller, but I guess I would argue that it's like suspenseful general fiction, which is kind of a weird note to say, but I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I was a little nervous that maybe this wouldn't hold up as being such a fantastic thriller, because I think that thrillers, as you read them, I had a little bit of a struggle getting into it in the beginning. These characters are meant to be unlikable, and it's not that I can't read from unlikable characters, but there's a certain type of like New York, I'm better than everybody, even though I just have like intense ennui, that I have a hard time as a perspective reading. It's why I didn't like Julie and Julia. And there are portions of this story, especially when you're just reading it, that I think really emphasize how unlikable both these people are. But the audiobook is much more enjoyable for me. I'm not really sure why, because it's still somebody, and honestly somebody who's snarky and condescending, reading these words, but I'm more enthralled by it because I think the voice is inviting you in. Now, I'm not going to ruin any twists, because I think if you don't know anything about Gone Girl, you're like, okay, that's crazy. If you do know a couple things about Gone Girl, which I think I did, I just haven't really voiced what they are, because I just would hate to have been wrong. I think you can enjoy it either way. I think the book isn't necessarily about the main twist. The main twist happens in the second part of the book. You're like less than 50% in, but you're really delving into how fucked up these people are and just how they cannot help themselves. And it really unravels. So I would say I'm hesitant to give it a 5, because I think that if I can only enjoy something in one type of its publication, then maybe it shouldn't be a 5, but I will say it's a 4.5. 60% of the way through The Fault in Our Stars, and like I said, it definitely has gotten less these people are insufferable and nobody's going to tell them because they have cancer, but it's still strongly there. And I'm thinking about it, and I don't think I would like this book in 2014. I never was a kid who liked books that were just like really sad to be sad. I always had a rule as a child that I like never would read anything with a dog on the cover or a horse on the cover, because I think I read Black Beauty, and the horse dies at the end of that, and of course Old Yeller, and I just think I knew that like those books often were just meant to be really sad. And also, I think there are a lot of books out there that are like, let's just act like this book is really deep and emotional because, and like moving, and not just you experience having emotions during it, but there's a lot of books that I think are just like, if you cry during it, people will think it's a good book. I think that's why a lot of people really like a lot of Colleen Hoover books, because they really are upsetting and you cry. And then people go, oh my God, this book was so good, I cried. And it's like, feeling a strong emotion to something does not innately mean that it's good. The Fault in Our Stars is something I could only read in small bursts, but it is fairly easy to read. I mean, it's a young adult novel, but yeah, I just don't think that this is the kind of book that I would have had any interest reading in high school because, one, I thought were like literature, and I just don't think I would have felt that way about this book. But additionally, I was reading other things. Like, I definitely read Silence of the Lambs, and I read some other books that I loved these books. I think I mentioned it, called like Nick Plumsky or something, The Diary of Nick Plumsky. And those books were garbage. Like, I definitely could not hold up the, like, I only read, those books were about like these 17-year-olds that insisted on getting married. Like, they were not good. But I think that I never would have felt drawn to The Fault in Our Stars just because I knew it was meant to be incredibly sad. And I asked my friend, and she said that it's just like, it's really sad. And I was like, okay, great. I think I've decided that The Goldfinch is not for me at this time, but I will be reading Station 11 and Broken Monsters. Broken Monsters is pretty long, but I think I could read it pretty quickly. And Station 11 doesn't seem particularly long. And then I will do books I was reading in of the top 10 pop culture moments of 2014. And there were the Sochi Winter Olympics, which we were big Olympics people in my house. So like, I watched every year of the Olympics. We watched all of the Olympics. My camera battery is going to die soon, but I got time. The Ellen selfie, which is interesting. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I just don't think this would hit the same way. Yeah, especially with fucking Kevin Spacey in the back. Whew. Times change. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West's wedding. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Yeah, Facebook was a much more intense place because Instagram came out, I guess, probably either in 2012 or I think it was 2013 because I was a junior in high school when I got Instagram. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. We said that. Pharrell's Happy takes over. That song drives me nuts. The Fault in Our Stars. The World Cup. And then, of course, People Who Died. Fancy came out at the end of that year. Yeah, I recall that. Oh, the launch of Musical.ly, now TikTok. And then 1989. The Kim Kardashian app. I have to tell you guys a story. I had the Kim Kardashian app when I was in college, and I also was in terrible credit card debt when I was in college. Awful credit card debt. I was really miserable, and I loved to spend money that I did not have, and I had a credit card that raised my limit. And I would take, like, I didn't understand what a cash advance was. So one time I just thought they gave me a $500 check, which is so dumb. But how was I to know? Why would I know? So I was in terrible credit card debt, but I had managed to like pay off enough of my credit card that I must have had like $100 limit on it. And it was during June term, so it was just like me and a few like of my sorority sisters are on campus. We had gone to the bar, we came back to our apartment, and I was pretty drunk. And that was during my drinking White Russians phase from our fucking dive bar in college. Gross. Like just truly Kahlua and milk, disgusting. And I was very drunk, and I was on the Kim Kardashian app, and then I spent $60 real in the app so I could get all those little coins, and I bought a private jet. $60 real that I for sure didn't have. That was absurd.
2014 stuff, and I think there's nothing more 2014 than taking internet personality quizzes. So let's see while I talk to you guys about some of the books. So I have obviously read Gone Girl since then. I really liked it. So unfortunately my updates, just the audio is so bad, but I will tell you this. When I first started reading it, I was reading it like on an ebook, and I was not enjoying it. Both these perspectives are really apathetic, yuppie New Yorkers that just like believe that they're the smartest, the most clever people, and that I found pretty frustrating. But But I switched to the audiobook, and I found that while they still have those character flaws, it's much more easy to understand that, like, they're not good people, and like I just think it's better in audiobook form. So if you haven't read Gone Girl, I would honestly go recommend it. I think the book is so good. And I really think it has like reset some thriller novels that I really think have made, I really think it has withstood the test of time, right? It is still a book people reference. It, to me, is a book that is a dynamic, really interesting thriller. I believe I've talked to you guys about this, but I recently read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and I was pretty disappointed. That was like book du jour just a couple years ago, and I found it really annoying. I really did not enjoy it. I tried both reading it and the audiobook, and I finished it. And the one thing that I saw a lot of reviews is that people were like really shocked by the twist. And I can appreciate that, but I do feel that there is something to be said for, like, obviously in a thriller book there is something else happening. There's a level of a twist. But if the entirety of the book is about the twist and not really the plot, and the twist is like kind of mediocre or doesn't make sense or something like that, then I think it really ruins the entirety of the book. And the thing that I liked about Gone Girl is that the twist happens fairly early on, and honestly, Gone Girl has been now in the zeitgeist for about 10 years, so I think you might be able to know or guess what the twist is, but the twist doesn't make the ending of the book. The twist is a tool to develop and delve more into these insane people, and it really helps you explore them. And I think that's such an interesting way to use the plot device of a twist, where it's not, the entire purpose of the book is not the fact that there's a twist. And when it comes to The Silent Patient, I did not see that twist coming because I thought it was stupid. So I'm really so sorry if you like loved it. And the thing is, maybe I would have loved it had I read it a few years ago, but not currently. So yeah, I would recommend it. I listened to the audiobook. I was invested. I was plucked. I liked it. It makes me want to read more Gillian Flynn. I'm kind of sad that I didn't read it before this, but I definitely wouldn't have read it in 2014. That's just like, I wasn't reading a lot of adult books. I wasn't reading a lot of YA. And now, so again, that's probably for me a 5-star. So a great option, to get a 5-star in this series. And also I said, I think it holds up. Now what I will say is the Fault in Our Stars is a book that did in fact make me cry. The book about 2 kids with terminal cancer, I cried. You got me. I did cry. I didn't dislike the book. Well, I guess it's complicated. Okay, so the first half of the book, I really was not enjoying it. And I think I made the observation, it's like, hey, it's 2 pretentious 17-year-olds that have had terminal cancer most of their life, and so nobody has told them to shut the fuck up. And the thing is like, most teenagers are really pretentious, but life knocks you around a little bit, and that you kind of wrap that up, that like, you mellow out, you become less obnoxious. But if you're dying and it's a tragedy, people are not going to do that to you for obvious reasons, but it really has exploded. And I think it's like on full display for the first part of the book. The book changes, and I'm so upset. Maybe I can there was a quote that I really liked that really got me towards the end of the book about the amount of infinities that, you know, people have, or the infinite amount of time. And I thought that was really good. This is not the kind of book that I really love to read, just like sad misery romance. Is not really a kind of book that's like regularly for me, and I don't think it would have been in 2014. Like, I had the opportunity to read both Gone Girl and The Fault in Our Stars in 2014, and I just didn't because I didn't want to. I don't really think this book holds up for me because I think it's very much a young adult novel. I think there is, of course, to me the book the first half is definitely worse than the second half. The second half, I mean, there are big questions and questions that are worth asking about grief, about assessing your own mortality, about what it means to know that you're going to die in a way different than all of us know, grappling with the concept of an afterlife, grappling with the idea of, like, what if I'm not here? What if I outlive you? What does that look like for me? And I just think that, like, that's all stuff that is worthwhile to ask. And it's definitely questions I was thinking about at 17. And thinking about grief and how to understand that. And knowing how different people handle things poorly or well. I will say I think the book went a little long. I'm not going to say who dies, but after one of the characters dies, which you I feel like you know is going to happen when you start reading it. One of the characters dies, and after their funeral, I liked that it went on a little bit. It didn't just stop there, but I felt like it went on very long after that, and I was pretty much ready for it to be done. So that book did, in fact, make me cry. And it did, I wouldn't say it was, like, it's not unreadable. I wouldn't not recommend it to people. It's just, like, not my style of story. And I definitely think the period of time it would have been the most poignant for me is past, which is fine. It's a young adult novel. But I don't think it, like, is horribly written or, like, John Green is a bad writer. It's just, like, not a story that would have appealed to me in 2014 and currently does not appeal to me. So I have 2 books left that I think I'm going to read. I'm going to read Station. It was on backwards, and now it's on right. Yeah, so what are we talking about? What is up? So I am reading Station 11 because that was in the finalists, one of the finalist categories for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I also was reading Beautiful Monsters, so I'm going to talk about that first. Beautiful Monsters was a finalist in the horror category for 2014 on the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I read maybe like 30 pages of it, and I'm not hard DNFing it yet, but I don't think I'm going to finish it. It sounded like it was going to be really interesting. It was about this, like, detective that's finding all these weird bodies and, like, solving the mystery of that, and like the bodies get more and more fucked up, but it's like the writing of it is so, I don't like it. And also it's a rare case of a multiple POV not working for me, because every 3 pages I feel they're new chapter breaks, okay, I will give it that, but we're switching perspectives and it's really hard to understand what's happening. And like in this book, Sisters of a Lost Nation, every few pages is a different chapter and a different timeline, but it's easy enough to keep track of because it's like one of 2 timelines, even though you're jumping around within those 2 timelines. There's something about it because it's all from one perspective that's like being easy to understand, but I assume at some point in Beautiful Bodies all of these perspectives will come together, but right now it's confusing, and I don't love the writing. The detective woman is written like a hard-boiled, like, kind of caricature-y of, like, what a detective is like, and I'm just not vibing with it, personally, so I haven't really been working on that. And also, like, it's not clinical enough to be terrifying the way parts of Natural Beauty were really clinical and scary. And it's not horrific enough to be scary. It's so, everybody's being so like, well, this is what it looks like so matter of fact about everything. And that can be really eerie and really scary, but there's something off in the tone of it for me, so I'm not really loving it. So, you know, that's not really for me at the moment. But I am reading Station 11, which I am liking. I'm listening to the audiobook of it. And I'm probably about like 20% of the way through. I didn't read the synopsis before I took it out, by the way. I just know that a lot of people, I feel like Books and Lala have talked about it, and I feel like some other creators I like talk about it, and I'm like, okay, what even is that book? Let me look at it. And actually, Lexi is reading it. I sound like I know this person. I don't. I just watched their channel. She's reading it this summer. This was a finalist in the fiction category, or maybe the science fiction category, and we're following a troupe of actors
for the bulk of the story after the flu pandemic apocalypse. And it's obviously interesting to go back and read a book that in so many ways happened a little bit, but was also written in 2014. I mean, a lot of books have come out post the pandemic that either are just like realistic fiction that took place during the pandemic, or they're alternate realities of the pandemic. And I tend not to like them because maybe it's just too close. I had a really good situation in the pandemic. Honestly, I was blessed to still work. I was blessed to work for a company at the time. A company at the time that took the pandemic incredibly seriously, that I had access to vaccines and everybody was getting tested. And I was still, making money, and even for a period of time, because I was an essential worker, making bonuses. Like, I had the best scenario, but there's something about reading books about the pandemic where it's just like, it's too close. It's too close, and I'm so annoyed. And, but there's something interesting about this book because there's a couple points in it when they go, it's like SARS, oh, we got over that quickly enough, or it's like, oh, it's like bird flu, and people are like, oh, that never affected us. And I remember that was such a sentiment at the beginning of the pandemic. It's so interesting. And I think we're going to, right now, we're like in the depths of figuring out how the troop is set up. It's very funny. Again, it's an interesting tone because it's very dire, but we're in the minutia of like the inner workings of these people who have been in a like an apocalypse like state for their entirety of their life, just about. But they're also having like a lot of silly infighting, and I like that kind of stuff. I like when people are people, and I like that the book is taking the time to do that, because I don't really think the book is going to be like and this is how we save the world. I think it's like this is how we got by in this world, which I kind of like a little bit better as I'm older. I think a lot of young adult books, it makes sense to be like, and this is how we save the world. But for adults, I like when it's like, this is how we get by. The troupe is constantly dipping in and out of being in different plays. It seems like King Lear is going to be a big through line in this story, which I actually read in high school. It was so fun reading it. Ben Lebowski, if you're watching. Actually, well, Ben didn't play King Lear, but my lit class in 2014, we did a section all on plays, and we would read them in class. And I remember when we did King Lear, everybody always like did the same people. So I remember, I think I did Oswald when we read it in class. The play section was definitely my favorite portion of AP Lit, but I will never ever forget reading A Doll's House, which is a book that I have reread multiple times. I would say by far one of my favorite plays. I haven't read very many plays, but definitely up there. And there was a kid in my class who always played Nora, and oh man, I wonder if that video is still up on the internet. Anyways, one of our friends, not a kid I knew, like one of our friends who lives in New York now, I haven't talked to in like 10 years, but I hope you're doing good. Such an iconic part of my like senior year in high school. But I do remember reading King Lear. Again, it was so vivid, these memories of this portion of this class in high school. I think because it was so fun. It wasn't super long. We also read Oedipus. We also read Oedipus Rex, Doll's House, Death of a Salesman, and King Lear. And those are the four that I remember us reading in class. Over the summer, we had to read one of two plays. We could either read Waiting for Godot, or we could read Arcadia. And I did not read Waiting for Godot. I read Arcadia. And at the time, I remember not understanding it at all. And I doubt I understand it now. My best friend, one of my best friends at the time, read, who's publishing his novels, or his novellas getting published this Saturday. So shout out to Luke. If you want a copy of Help, I'm Gay and My High School Bully's Hotter Than Me, check him out. His readings in New York this weekend. But yeah, it's just so funny to think about those things and see that this book is really 2014 coded. For me personally, because King Lear was a big part of my senior year of high school. We didn't do that play though. We never did classic plays like that. I am just updating you. Because today I finished Station 11, And I just realized I definitely returned it on Libby. So let me take back out. I did the audiobook of this. I did an update with you guys the other day. I listened to a large chunk of it today because I had a fair amount of work that was very like computer focused. So I was able and like pretty monotonous. It was a lot of like printing and laminating and cutting because I was doing a project. It was work that I gave myself because I had an idea and everybody said, great, you could do that for everybody. And I was like, oh, I guess. So I was able to really focus in on the book, and the thing I was doing was really repetitive but didn't require a lot of focus, like a lot of mind energy. So I was able to listen to Station 11. And I think when I checked in, I said I was enjoying it. I really did like it. And for reasons I do not know why, this book reminds me of Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, which I also listened to an audiobook when we were I was listening to that like the week that we were moving, like packing and then driving to Omaha. They are not similar in a lot of ways, but they hit a lot of similar notes and tones for me. Station 11, you're following multiple different perspectives of people and events, and you're kind of jumping through timelines of things that have happened before societal collapse and things that are currently happening 15 to 20 years. That's kind of the time span you're doing, or more, after society has collapsed. And society has collapsed because essentially there is a SARS-like disease that they're calling the Georgian flu that just kills you so quickly. The incubation time is so quickly, and some people are alive, and you follow like 6 to 10 people that you expect. I mean, I've read books like this that you expect are connected, but you don't necessarily know how. And I'm sorry if you feel that that's a spoiler. I don't, because I was not surprised that these people were connected. And they're very like tangentially connected. Like they're barely connected to each other. But I think the book is about like humanity and togetherness and death and grief and what could be and what is and the things that we feel in life and the things that we don't feel in life. I would say out of all the books that I have read that for this video, Gone Girl, The Fault in Our Stars, I did not finish. Beautiful Monsters, I didn't like it. I didn't have to. And this book, this is the one that I think is the most, to this day, meaningful. But I think that that is unintentional. I think that it's so meaningful because so shortly after this book was published, we did have such an insane pandemic. You guys were there for it, right? Where so much of this, I think, is really resonates with a lot of people who worried that things like this may or may not happen to some extent. And it reminds me of how things kind of were in 2020 and 2021, where there was, yes, a lot of tension and unrest, but there was also a lot of like forced unity on people. But even if you didn't have that, like from commercials and stuff, like I was working in a job where I was considered an essential worker, and there were very few of us, and we were constantly like coming together and trying to work together and do things because we wanted our coworkers to still have jobs and everything like that. And it was a tense time, a stressful time, but it also felt like a weirdly like somewhat connected to people that you wouldn't necessarily feel connected to, if that makes sense. So I think not necessarily by virtue of this book, but by virtue of things that happened to relate to this book is the one that I think is the most poignant still. But I do think separately, in general, this book is the one that is the most like a comment on the human condition, and so is more relatable as time goes on. There's a lot of universal truths about connection and humanity and community and fear of death and what you would do in these crazy circumstances. So again, I think that this would also, regardless, continue to be the one that is the most poignant and like probably the easiest one in a lot of way for people, like a easier, broader recommendation, because it's such a broad topic. It's basically about the human condition in this specific scenario. But I'd be willing to read. I don't know if I would say this one is my favorite, because I do think of the 3 that I read fully in their entirety, Gone Girl is probably my favorite one that I read. but I do think this one will stick. So as I was saying, and then my camera said it was full, and now the lighting's just super weird because it just is. I can't fix it. But what I was saying is that I don't think any of these books are so unrelatable. None of these books are. And a lot has changed since 2014, but not that much has changed seemingly. Of course, the one that is the most tangential, of course, is the one that things happen that were in 2014. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this blast from the past. Hope you guys loved hearing how both I am so old, but I'm sure if I were to watch this in a few years, or anybody who's older than me watches it, it'd be like, oh my god, you're so young. But yeah, like I said, my uterus is stealing my beauty and youth, and I look through Christ. Anyways, I'm going to go now and be back part of this decade, this year. I'm reading a fun